Hey, welcome back to the Flight Club podcast. If you have ever felt like, what am I supposed to do with my life? Where do I go? What do I do? I don't know what I'm called to. We're talking about it today. This episode is for you, and I hope you enjoy it. So one of the things we hear talked about a lot and maybe can sometimes get confused about is this big concept called calling. So I thought maybe we could unpack some of that today. And how do you know what you are called to do?
Yeah, it's a huge point of, I think, for many confusion, because I think a lot of times our wants and desires get in the way of actually the reality of what we're called to do. Like, I want to be called is different than I'm called.
Right. True.
I want to do this is different than this is what God's asking me to do. And I think we've made calling something that we choose. I'm choosing the calling of, whatever that is for you. I'm choosing the calling of being a worship leader, or I'm choosing the calling. And what I've discovered about calling is it's often the case that it's not what you choose, but it's what chooses you, which is a big difference.
Yeah.
When you read your Bible, I would say more often than not, you're going to find that the callings that we celebrate and the people that we talk about, the heroes of faith, the ones that we learn the lessons from, if you go all the way back to where that began, I don't read the text where they're like, I feel called to.
Yeah.
In fact, the ones that say that are usually the ones that mess up.
True.
Right? I don't see David going, I feel called to be king.
Yeah.
He didn't choose that calling. It chose him. And I think once you begin to wrap your head around, it's the opposite way when you do it God's way than when you do it the world's way.
Yeah.
The world's like, here's the career ladder, and you should try and climb it. There is no ladder to climb in the kingdom. Because if there was a ladder to climb in the kingdom, that means I have to step over someone, or I have to get somewhere to feel the fulfillment that comes by getting to the top of that ladder. That's how corporate life looks. It's not how kingdom life looks. Our job is to be obedient to what God has called us to do, which it's him that's doing the calling and we're doing the fulfilling of the call, rather than I'm doing the calling and God, could you fulfill what I've called?
Yeah.
So they sound the same,
Yeah.
but there's an entirely different energy behind the first than the second.
Yeah.
If God's calling you into something, choosing you for something, then he's also the one that's anointing that, sustaining that, and providing for that. If you're saying, this is what I feel called to do, then you're saying, okay, this is the mountain I'm going to climb, and God, I need you to kind of help me out.
This. Yeah.
And so, when I, years ago, I preached a message, and it's a good one, called, what chooses you changes you. Around this whole trying to help a generation understand this. I think there's a whole generation that maybe have skipped school when it comes to this lesson. When I think about Mary, she didn't go, I feel called to carry the Savior of the world, right? She didn't volunteer herself. She didn't even have it in her mind.
Yeah.
It wasn't on her career plan. And it literally tells us that, an angel appears and overshadows her, which, let's just stop there. Like, the calling that God has for our lives often means that we become the ones that are in the shadows, because it's about what he wants to do, not about what we want to do. It all begins with her being overshadowed by him.
Yeah.
And in that overshadowing, she's informed, you've been chosen to carry something, to which she's like, I don't feel qualified. How do I do this? Well, you don't need to worry. I don't need you to do all of the things you think you need to do, because I'm going to overshadow you. I'm going to fill you. I'm going to make sure that this is something that rests on you because you've been favored by God for this. And you know what? If I watch the journey of Mary, it teaches me so much about our journeys, that when God chooses you, it doesn't matter who unchooses you.
Mm.
Doesn't matter who doesn't like the fact that you got chosen.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter, who's trying to compete with you. It's insignificant, because this is all something that chose you, that is beyond you.
Yeah.
And, I put it this way, then what chooses you changes you.
Mm.
What you choose, you change.
Mm.
It's your works that are changing it. It's you're choosing this calling, so now you're creating that calling. You're trying to create the opportunity. You're trying to create the pathway for it. You're trying to put the effort in to make it work. But what chose Mary began to change it. I mean, think about it. It changed everything about her.
Yeah.
Like her shape physically, like her cravings, her sleep, the next season of her life, her company, her journey, like everything from that moment onwards, everything began to change because of what had chosen her. And I'd rather live a life where the God choosing is the thing that is bringing the changes rather than my choosing. I'm not smart enough to make that many good choices.
I understand.
So
Me too.
I think we got to flip it when it comes to this area of calling, and maybe ask ourselves, is it more my calling than his calling?
Yeah.
My choosing than his choosing?
So I want to ask you, because it seems like those two things just are so closely tied together, like my desires and the gifts that I feel like God's placed in me. And like, how do you decipher what has, what God chose you to do? Like why he's placed you on this earth.
Right. I think, the Bible talks a lot about, there's the parable of like the coins.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at that, it's really talking about how, the master gave some 5 coins, some 4 coins, some 3 coins.
Yeah.
I think we think everybody gets 5 because God's gonna be fair.
Yeah.
And actually, it would be really cruel of God to give you 5 if he's not given you the ability for the 5. You don't want nothing that you're not built or graced for.
Right.
So I think, first of all, how do we discover? There's a grace that comes with the thing that God's given you an ability to do. And you just know it. Like a lot of times, like, I don't know what I'm called to do. Actually, if you were to take a step back and analyze where the grace is in your life, the things that when you do it, it's just, you can't explain it. There's just something different on it that is not just you. There's a God plus you on that. If I tried to sit here and sing to y'all would know.
Go for it.
Y'all would know that's not what God has gifted me to do, right? I sit my friend Natalie here and ask her to sing, we're all going to be in the presence of Jesus within the first few notes, because it's just a gift. She's not just good at singing. She's a vessel through which God communicates his power, his love via her vocal ability.
Yeah.
You could sit down here and read something that God has gifted someone with the power of eloquence through a pen, and you read it and something's set free in you.
Yeah.
You can be in a house with someone and they serve you, and it's not just like they're serving you. It's like they are literally watering your soul. They're literally, like, I can think of people in my life, like when I go to their home, it's spiritual. It's like I feel restored. It's like I feel safe. I feel taken care of. That's a gift.
Yeah.
So I think, first of all, we have to stop making a few things the gift and a few things the calling, and then disqualifying all these other things as if they're well, that's not a 5 talents. So it's not like, no, every single thing that God gave us as an ability, if he gave it to you, it has the hand of God on it. And we've got to realize my job's not to try and attain 5 if I'm 3. My job's to take my 3 and make it work for the sake of the kingdom. And I think that would help us all, like stop striving and settle into the thing that God's made us good at. So I think we've got to reframe that. But I think, honestly, once you realize, I began to realize God's made me good at seeing things in the Word. He's given me a way to articulate some things that maybe others might not have seen. Once I realized that, I realized, okay, that's something that's choosing me. It's changing me. I can see it everywhere. It's keeping me awake at night. It's something that I know, I sense that God wants me to expound. But then I think what I've realized is no one should be more committed to my calling than me.
What do you mean by that?
I think there's a school of thought, or maybe it's not even a school of thought, maybe it's just an attitude that we've adapted, which says, well, I feel called. What are you going to do about it? What opportunity are you going to give me? What door are you going to open for me? How are you going to invest in me so that my gift can grow? What are you going to do to help me be a better steward of my gift? And some of that's not wrong. But if you're expecting others to work harder on your calling than you're willing to work, we have a problem, right? That's why Paul said to Timothy, fan into flame, like get busy. Go do something with it. That's why the parable of the talents, the master's angry with the one that buries it in the ground because he's like, what are you doing? Like, I gave this to you to do something with it. So there's the entrustment God gives us, but then there's the responsibility that puts on us to become now someone who's diligent with our gift. I think a lot of times we say, I feel called, and then we're looking for everyone to affirm it, confirm it, nurture it. And I think about David and, feeling this sense of calling, which ends him up alone in front of Goliath. And he could have said, well, God, I feel called, but I need at least 10 more guys to help me take this dude down. And, but actually it was David that had to work on David, that had to come to a place of confidence in what God had called him to do. And that's like Gideon. I feel called. And then God's like, then go in the strength you have. Like, stop waiting for everyone else to be the strength to be called. Stop waiting for everyone else to applaud you in order for you to get out this wine press. You're going to have to start being the biggest investor in your gift. I think I preached a message just recently. I was asked to go speak to a young people's conference, and I'm loving this season of being the oldest person in the room at the young people's conference. I'm like, I have to go to my daughter. Is this like a vibe? Are we good? Like, am I going to humiliate you if I go dressed like this? Like, what do people even wear anymore? I'm actually loving it because this generation want you to talk to them like we're talking now. They actually don't need a rah-rah. Sometimes they do, but actually they need to know how to fan into flame their own gift. And so I was going to speak recently at this youth conference, young adults conference, and I felt God take me to the verse. So we're going to have a mini preach now.
Let's go.
Take me to a verse in Jeremiah. In Jeremiah, God's obviously calling Jeremiah. He's being chosen. He's not choosing it. God's choosing him. And, it begins with God telling him, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. And then it goes on to say, and before you were born, I set you apart. And then Jeremiah's response is probably like all our response. Well, I don't know how to speak. I'm too young. And God says back to him, well, don't say you're too young. And I'm going to tell you what to speak. In other words, he's like, okay, here's the reason why I can't do that. I feel called, but my age. And God's like, age is not the issue. I don't know what to say. I'm going to tell you what to say. That's not the issue. Well, and then God says to him, don't be afraid of others. So others aren't the issue. And you get all the way down to this conversation, and actually God deals with all the things that we would put in the way as a reason why I can't fulfill my calling. He's like, your age is not the issue. What you have to say is not the issue. Others are not the issue. But he asks him one question, and I think this is an issue for this generation, and maybe for some of us elders as well. Yeah. He asked Jeremiah, I have a question for you, Jeremiah. I just need to know, what do you see? And Jeremiah begins to say what he sees. And then second time, he asks him twice, Jeremiah, what do you see? And I think when it comes to our calling, we have a sight problem. We're not seeing it correctly. And so when I was talking to these young people, I was saying your age is not the issue. And, what you're going to say is not the issue necessarily. God's going to help you. That opportunity is not your issue. Fearing others is not your issue. God's greater. But what you see, that could potentially be the issue. Yeah. And so I began to talk to them about, I called my message amblyopia, which everyone's like, what the heck? Yeah, is she talking about? But amblyopia is just a technical word for lazy eye. And I began to explain that God was testing Jeremiah's eyesight, because if he did not see correctly, he wouldn't speak correctly, he wouldn't act correctly, he wouldn't fulfill his call correctly. So I think there's a sense of asking a generation in answer, long way round answer to where we began of this question of calling. I think a lot of the question of calling is to do with our question of seeing. How do you see calling? How do you see your calling? And if we have an amblyopia issue, a lazy eye issue, a lazy eye basically is an eye that just refuses to focus. It just refuses. So when that eye refuses to focus, it drifts, and it makes the good eye, the one that's working, overwork, right? So now we only really see through one eye. And if I was to put that into this message context that I'm trying to get across today, I think, we know we have two eyes. We have two sets of eyes. Right. The Bible tells us we have these eyes, but we also have internal spiritual eyes. And I think when it comes to calling, our spiritual eye has been lazy. And so we've allowed this eye to say, well, I want that calling, or I want to look like that, or I want my ministry to look like that, or I want to be like them, or I want my life to be called like that person. And so we've allowed this eye to become lazy. And now we're making all of our decisions about our calling through literally one set of eyes. And that's why he's saying to Jeremiah, I need to know what you see. And what Jeremiah began to see was not anything in the natural. It was all in the spiritual.
I just have to say.
Yes.
So my son has a lazy eye.
That's crazy.
Just wild. I'm smiling while you're talking, because I was just talking to the ophthalmologist, and so he's getting put on glasses. But one thing that they say is that not even is it just over time, one eye can literally become the only eye, because your brain, it'll start to tell your brain that you don't need that other eye. Right. So your brain will literally turn that eye off and make you go blind.
See, you're backing up my whole spiritual insight.
I don't know if you know this, but
I don't, but that's awesome. See, because in the Bible, first the natural, and then the spiritual. God always works these things out so we can see it so clearly. And I think we have this problem where, because that internal eye. Remember, even when Samuel was going to go anoint the next king, he so got used to seeing Saul with this eye, and almost these eyes had become dull through disappointment. And so when he's going to anoint the next king. He's looking for what Saul looked like. He's looking for the tallest and the strongest. And he looks at Eliab and he's like, that must be him. And God's like, I don't use those eyes.
Yeah.
That's not how I'm choosing. You would never choose David with these eyes. He's too small. He's too scrawny. He's not looking like the type of person that would be a king. It definitely doesn't look like a giant killer. And I think oftentimes, even in the church, I would say even to some leaders that are listening right now, like be careful that you're not making choices, even about who's on your team and who's in your world and who's around you, just based on these eyes. Just because they present something that sounds right, looks right, doesn't mean it is right for you. And when I was with the young people, because I knew we were going to talk about this today, I brought my prop just in case I got to get this out. I use this prop with the young people. And now if you're in a car listening or driving, please do not swerve to look at the screen. You can go back and see it later. But I have in my hand, you know, what a lot of kids get, this toy. And I was trying to say to the generation that I was teaching, if you look at this, you're going to be like, I want to be that. I want to be that. I want to be that calling. I want to be that person. Right. I want my life to look like that. But that's not that. Like, you have to have an eye to go, well, inside of that is a whole heap of time and discipline and sacrifice. Right. And inside of that is a whole load of, you know, testing and trials. And, you know, it's easy to look at David as king and forget all of the things that he went through and the betrayals and it's easy to say, well, I want to slay a giant, but do you want rejection? Do you want to have all that time that David had where he felt like, you know, he's like crying out to God and and you get all the way down to realize that, you know, the character that built that calling, you know, you got to start here, but we don't want to start here. Because all we want to see is this. So our lazy eye is like, well, I want that. But our spiritual eye realizes, well, I got to start here. And for some of you today, you're not liking this message and you want to turn this podcast off because you're like, she up in my business and I don't want her in my business. But that's the Holy Spirit, my friend, up in your business. And I was trying to help. And I'm trying to help right now when it comes to this concept of calling. I think it begins with you got to see it right. You got to see that it's a commitment. You got to see it's to do with your character. You got to see it's God's choice, not your choice. And if God's like, that's not what I chose you to do, you better put it down and be willing to take. And if God's like, I gave you 3, I didn't give you 5, you got to trust God with the 3 because it's just as good as the 5 because everybody got the same reward. God was just asking them to take what they had and, you know, make it work. They all got rewarded the same. The only one that didn't is the one that did nothing. So I think that thing that chooses you and then it's something that then you go, okay, now I've got to let it change me. I've got to let it move me. I've got to let it shape me. I've got to let it rearrange me. And I don't, and you know, one of the things, you know, with lazy eye that they tell you is the only way sometimes you can fix a lazy eye is by strapping up the eye.
Catching that thing.
Right? That you've become too dependent on. Until this other one kicks back in. And some of us, this literally is what we got to do. We got to cover that lens that we keep looking through. And, you know, whether that's, you know, social media or how we view someone all the time through a certain lens, like we got to stop looking at all that stuff that confuses this until this eye begins to kick back in and we begin to see clearly.
Are you looking to go further in your leadership? Well, if you are, I want to invite you to join The Collective. The Collective is a 5-month virtual mentorship program led by Charlotte. I know that it will encourage you, it will inspire you, and it will challenge you. So why don't you join us for our upcoming season of The Collective? But hurry now, there's only a few spots that remain. So visit charlottegambill.com/join or scan the QR code on the screen to apply.
So 2 questions for you. The first one is, how do you recognize you're seeing something in your natural eye versus your spiritual eye? Is there almost like a heart test or something that, you know, that you can do to recognize like, okay, I don't think this is me moving in the right direction. You know what I mean?
I think, can you put a knife in it? if I was to think about, Isaac and Abraham, like that was, God chose him to steward this generational, legacy. And yet at the same time, God's like, I need to know you put a knife in it if I needed you to. Like, are you so attached to your calling? Are you so attached to your thing? Are you so attached to this gift or this entrustment that it's become more about you than it has about him? I think that's a good test. If you think about it, what chooses you, it changes you, but ultimately what chooses you never belongs to you. So Mary didn't get to name Jesus, and Elizabeth didn't get to name John.
Yeah.
And Hannah didn't get to keep Samuel.
Yeah.
And, Moses' mum didn't get to name Moses or keep Moses. Like, that entrustment was never about them. It was about God using them to do something greater. When it becomes more about us and the attachment that thing has to us, then we've made it something we should have never made it. So I think it's that test of, can you lie it down? Can you put the knife in it if you needed to?
Yeah.
Because ultimately God told you to. And because it's his more than it's yours, if he asks for this, then you're going to do that. And I think that where that ownership kicks in and that controlling of it, that's when I think you've made it something that you shouldn't.
That's good. That'll preach. Second question is, so if you feel like you're operating in your calling, or you feel like this is what I'm supposed to do, and you said like there should be a grace to it. If those doors, quote unquote, aren't opening, if there's an opportunity that follows it, what do you do with that?
I think I'm a big believer. My life is a testimony to God making a way in ways that I would have never even imagined that God would navigate my life. And honestly, if I was to be a really simplistic answer to that, I'd just say stop trying so hard and trust that if God needs you there, he'll get you there. Because sometimes implicit in what you just said is the expectation of it's God if I end up here, here, and here. You know what I'm saying? Like, so like, sometimes when people say, well, how do I get where God needs me to get?
Yeah.
It's saying God's incapable of steering your life. He's totally capable of steering your life.
Yeah.
But it's just that sometimes we've set the coordinates only to be steered a certain way. So then we say, well, I'm just going to help God out. Right?
Give him a little hand.
You know what I'm saying? So I think we have to boil that down of, because there's a right way to be willing and open and faithful and keep showing up and serving and be planted. And all of those things are critical to God being able to use. God can't use a life that's planted and rooted. God can't use a moving brick. So there's principles where we need to not be off trying to chase something, but actually secure in, if God's got it for you, he knows where you live. Yeah. Right. And so there's being available, but at the same time being planted. But I also think that sometimes we've planned almost the career path of what it looks like for our gift to fully be recognized. And I just think we should die to that. And I think then we would see more doors open. It's a big subject. It's a big subject. And I think we probably gave you a lot of food for thought today. And maybe you just need to trust God. Maybe you need to close that lazy eye. Maybe you need to embrace the thing that's choosing you. Yes. That wants to change you because you chose a calling, but this one's choosing you, and better the one that chooses you than the one you choose. So whatever your wrestle is today, I think we're giving you some food for thought at the Flight Club today.
Yep.